What if most of your suffering comes from silent contracts you didn't even know you signed? In this episode, we're going to dive into a book, one that is at the heart of our teachings, the Four Agreements. And this book, if you learn to read these pages and take the message away, can be one of the most life-changing books you ever read.
Was for me.
Was for me. This is the new Ashla Podcast. My name is Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by Justin Gates. So, the Four Agreements. This was the first book recommendation you ever gave me back in the day, well before I became a student. Before I dove into this path, it was one of the first book recommendations you gave me. And I remember reading the pages and being like, this is a fascinating concept. Now that I've gone through this journey, I realize it's more than just a concept. It is an articulation of what domesticates us in our personalities and in the way we show up in the world.
I love that question you asked at the very beginning here. What if most of your suffering comes from silent contracts you don't even know you signed? I mean, if we ever taught one thing, that would be the thing to teach. And there's a reason why I shared that book with you, and why it's basically mandatory reading for anybody who becomes a student of mine. It's a great book because it's such a great foundational understanding into what makes us tick. It goes right, and it's like a harpoon. It just goes right deep. But at the same time, it can be a very layered understanding. So a lot like the Axioms, which is why I love this book so much. You get something new every single time.
Yeah.
You listen to it, or you read it, or you just pick up a part out of it. But to answer your question, we carry these silent contracts very quietly within us.
Yeah, so much so we don't even know they're there. Like, as you start doing shadow work, you start uncovering the truth about yourself. You start to see these agreements you made, but you operate your whole life without even realizing, hey, this is something that I made an agreement with that I never consciously even realized was there.
Right. Because it's reinforced by this repetition that also you don't recognize, especially because, we're young, we're little. This starts as before we even learn how to speak. We are starting to make these little silent contracts with the world.
Yeah.
So, and they're not something you can find on paper, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that a court would uphold, but yet they bind us just like those other things do.
Yeah, I love the reference he makes in the book about the little girl singing a song and the mom's having a bad day and her mom being like, oh, you got a horrible singing voice. And that kid from there on always agreed with herself, made the agreement that I got a horrible voice, I shouldn't sing.
Right.
And it's just like, it's so true, because it's not like that kid was consciously like, you know what, should I second guess this? It was just a belief that then got instilled in her because of the opinion of someone she trusted.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, with her entire life, this woman is her everything. And it's difficult to face that, especially when the person that is your salvation and your protection and literally is your ticket to survival for a good part of your life. I wouldn't say most of it, but for a good part of it. But, as he writes in here, we're addicted to these things. We're addicted to being the way we are. We're addicted to these contracts and these agreements.
Yep. Before we get too much further if you're listening to this episode, if you listen all the way to the end, we're offering a chance and we're giving away a copy of this book. So tune in till the end to find out how to get on that bandwagon.
Yeah. If I was a millionaire, if I hit the lottery tomorrow, I would make it a point to give this book away for free. That's how powerful it is. I mean, it is such a transformational piece of philosophy. When I first encountered this book and the ideas, I didn't come at it like, well, I did come at it like it was just a popular self-help book. But I quickly realized that it wasn't that, right? This isn't actually a book. It's a mirror.
Yeah. Well,
and it's not a mirror that, where I can see myself in shade, which I know I need to a little bit right here, guys. I get it. But it reflected something super, super deep that I didn't even realize that was there, right? Yeah. These contracts and agreements that shaped my words, my actual words, and my choices and how I seen myself. Now, not all of them were bad. Some of them were in service to the light. I didn't know that at the time, but they were, right? Yeah. But many of them weren't. So I wanted to start off letting people know that this is not really a book review. It's an invitation. And we're going to try to convince you to get this book if you haven't read it. And if you do have this book already, read it again, right? So you talk about a snow globe.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Tell me about that.
You know, it's like the way to look at it is, again, these are all silent agreements that we don't even realize we've made. And like a snow globe, you have all the pieces at the bottom. And when you start getting into shadow work, you start getting into self-awareness. You're shaking that snow globe, and those pieces of you that aren't actually you come to the surface, and you all of a sudden see the truth underneath. And it starts to fall back, it starts to cover it again, but you no longer are ignorant to that was just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, for me, I'm not approaching this episode as a book review. This book has been reviewed probably tens of thousands of times. For me, today it's an invitation. It's an invitation for you and an invitation for you. Read it again, Michael.
Yep.
You know, to shake that snow globe and watch all of these false agreements rise and settle so that you can kind of see clearly. You start to anyway, and that's what we're about here is clarity, right? To see these rules and agreements and dogma even that you've been living by without knowing it. So you can see where they come from and start to actually move towards better authenticity for yourself. So where you can actually see, is this my dogma? Are these my rules? Or were they just given to me in silence by a world really who doesn't know who I am? That's how this book hit me. You know, it's like, wow, I'm seeing myself in a new way. And, you know, we'll get into this, but, you know, dozens of times it took me to really start to crack that open. So, but yeah.
Well, I think for me, when you recommended this book for me, I was reading so many self-help books. I was reading How to Unfold Yourself. I was reading the Meditations, Plato's Republic. I was reading all these different books on philosophy and the path. And it's like, how do I get to this path? It was all about where I want to go with my value system is what I was reading about. This book is like a precursor, a prelude to the journey, because this is helping you manage what is happening now to start living more in alignment with what you want to become.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, as I said in our last episode, you were like the library of endless knowledge on things all self-help, especially in that. Why did this book hit you so differently?
It was a lot different than these are different things you can do in your life to be more stoic. These are because all the things I was reading were more based on just how to live life now. This was about how you've been living life. This was this was actually looking at the mechanisms underneath the surface and why you are the way you are. I mean, we did an episode months ago about leaving the Matrix and how it's like we're all hardwired in. This book is leaving the Matrix. It is realizing the domestication that we have gone through and being able to tap into how we can start pulling the tether on all these strings we've been operating from for a long time.
It's an introduction to shadow work too. Sometimes it pushes you into shadow work. Heather, I had Heather listen to the Audible version of this book, which is a beautiful way to read it too. The narrator he's spot on. It's one of my favorite books to listen to, and I've listened to it, like I said, dozens and dozens and dozens of times. The first 3 or 4 times she listened to it, she couldn't get through it without really, really kind of becoming emotional. And it took her several times to push on just through the introduction of the book, because it's very powerful. And she wasn't crying in a bad way. She was starting to have clarity, and you know, these things are rarely comfortable. You know, alchemy is rarely comfortable, and shadow work is rarely comfortable. I can't think of any happy times through my shadow work.
Yeah,
I can't think of one.
Those aha moments.
Except for at the end when I'm like, wow, I can see clearly now. The fog is moving, and that was a joyous time. That was a time for celebration. But boy, the road is hard. So, you know, this book is super powerful because it teaches you that from the moment we arrive in this world, we begin absorbing like a sponge, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just the language or habits, but these unspoken rules and this unspoken dogma and these agreements and contracts of how to be. Not how to be authentic, but how to be. How to get along, how to get through it. And we take these from our parents and our schools and our religion and our broader culture, right?
Yep.
And not all of it's bad. Sometimes it's love, and I'll say most of the time, the people in our lives who love us, or looking out for us, they give us these agreements, and they help us through these agreements in a loving way. I mean, well, from a loving place in their heart. And other times, it's kind of given to us with a switch, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think of my mom, how she wanted to protect me as a kid. She wanted me safe. And she taught me at a very young age that everything can be dangerous and everything can kill you. And I grew up with that belief up until I was probably 18, when all of a sudden it's like, I can't keep being afraid of everything. And I started pushing myself to do more dangerous stuff. But it's like, that was a deep-seated belief it was an agreement I made with myself after my mother showed it to me. And again, it wasn't out of ill will. It wasn't because she was like, I need him to fear the world. No, she
loves you very much, yeah.
Exactly.
We don't want our children to get hurt. It kills us. For anybody out there who's a parent or a really close aunt or uncle or whatever, the feeling is the same. It just crushes our soul and our heart when we see them get hurt. But you know that when you said that, it reminds me of that movie, A Thousand Ways to Die in the West.
Yeah.
I could just picture you in that movie in place of, oh boy, what's his name? I can't believe I can't think of his name. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm horrible with names, though. I'm horrible with names.
But, you know, they're singing songs about all the ways to die, and he's showing everybody how, like in the West, everything can kill you.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know it's kind of... That just reminded me of that. So, like, in my head, I was watching you sing the song and point out all the things.
That could kill. That's great. Man, I remember being a little kid. One of the greatest memories I have in my mind of when I was triggered by this belief system was going to the museum and getting that third floor, which the Natural History Museum in Denver is massive. And that third floor is so high up. And I just remember looking down, and I ended up holding the ground, and I couldn't move because I just kept picturing it collapsing. And I remember that was one of the scariest moments of my life, and it was just because I saw the danger.
Yeah. I didn't grow up in such an environment. We were sent outside to figure it out, fend for ourselves, right?
Yep.
So they called it in the book. He calls this the domestications of humans, right? Like, and it's literally once he starts breaking it down, and you start to see kind of inside the spaces there, you start to realize that we're being trained like wild animals, dude, right?
Yep.
And we're like being trained the same way that we train our pets, or we train, and that makes you stop for a second and go, what the hell?
No.
Because, you know, it's like basically society rewards us when we follow the rules and we accept the dogma, and what does it do if we don't? It punishes us, right? So over time, what does that teach us to do? It teaches us to police ourselves and judge ourselves. And then we start carrying the voice of the teacher, the parent, the preacher, or whoever, you know, put these things in us until we can hardly tell where they end, or where they begin and where they end, right? It just gets so muddled up.
No, it's so true though. And it's like, you can try to be the perfect parent, you can be on the healing journey, working on all your crap. There's nothing you can do to stop your kids from instilling beliefs, whether it comes from school or even being around you, because when it comes to trauma, when it comes to life, it's never about what happens to us or what's around us. It's how we internalize these things.
Right.
And you can do your best to create a safe space for a kid to gain autonomy and independence, as well as help them feel safe, secure, and loved. But in the end of the day, you can only do the best you can. And just as you see these agreements happen within your own children or the people you love, don't take it personally, because you can only do the best you can. And the only amount you have control over is a very, very small amount.
Yeah. And this is a perfect time to plug this into emotions. And this is where people have the most trouble. It's where I had the most trouble. And it's why when I teach emotional maturity and stuff to people, it's like, you know, there are no bad emotions. There are no good emotions. Emotions are emotions. They're messengers, right?
Yep.
But he makes the case, and it's true, that, you know, some of these agreements really tell us which emotions are acceptable, which ones you're allowed to express, which ones you have to suppress, right?
Yeah.
You hear it all the time. Girls are allowed to cry, boys are not allowed to cry, unless their dog or their mom dies, right?
Yep.
Type thing. So They shape us. They shape us in such a way. They shape our behavior. They shape us to accept other people's idea of suffering. They shape us to get this weird idea of what this sense of self that's usually distorted in some way. It's not super authentic because we'll spend our lives chasing approval or hiding that authentic voice or that authentic expression.
Yeah. I mean, society, it's getting better. I mean, like, men are now being more welcome to share emotions. It's just the issue is the only emotion men are really being welcome to now experience is sadness. And it's like we need to open it up. We need to create safe spaces for people to feel anger. We need to create safe spaces for people to feel fear or overwhelm or burnout and make it acceptable that they might need something a little more right now to work through these emotions. And it's like I've been on this journey for a while, and I've been doing a lot of shadow. I do shadow work all the time because I'm always constantly trying to figure myself out. And it's like I've realized recently that I've gotten a lot of emotional intelligence, but I'm still not great at processing my emotions because I have a problem of intellectualizing my emotions. I'll try to dissect them and understand them as a way to avoid feeling them. And that was a hard pill to swallow I've had the last couple weeks.
But what do we teach? You must call them out and confront them, no matter what they are, which is difficult. And, you've come a long ways from when I first met you many years ago, when you were just a wee little lad, right?
Yep.
Yeah, now you're all grown up and you got chest hair and stuff. No, I'm just kidding. I got a little bit too. Dude, everybody that knows me in my daily life, they'll never believe this. But I also don't have they believe it when I tell them, and I do. I don't care. This past Monday, I had a nuclear meltdown, dude. I had an absolute freaking meltdown where I sat in that papasan chair and I cried my eyes out and let my wife Heather hold me because it was the only thing that I could think to do.
Man, that's so powerful right there.
And I don't give a shit if anybody thinks it's whatever. I didn't need this book to not care about what people thought. Like, we're going to get into this later, but the whole taking stuff personally, that was never a problem for me. I know it's the hardest one, and it's hard for a lot of people, but early on, I stopped giving a crap what anybody thought of me because I realized that I couldn't get anywhere. I couldn't grow or improve or even move around, explore without somebody giving me their opinion. So, I know I don't look like a guy who sometimes expresses himself and allows him to be vulnerable, but I do. And I think every man should.
I agree.
Every man should. Get you. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's acceptable for us to be sad, which is very dangerous if that's the only thing you're allowed to do. Because that sadness can develop into some really bad depression and stuff. And we already have a big problem with people checking out.
Yeah. Well, and then men having to suppress anger. I mean, we're looking at how the dating pool, how dating is becoming more and more not a thing in society. And a big part of that is men not being able to express anger and emotions around that sphere, grow up being nice guys, myself included. I was one of those. And it's just like that is not a functioning man, nor is he going to be effective when it comes to being an adult.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I can cry and then fight somebody if they have a problem with it. Like, no big deal, You usually I'll let people dictate what they get next from me if that's what they want. Yeah. I had an absolute nuclear meltdown, dude, and I needed it. I really did, because after that I felt great. But I have somebody, in my life that allows me to be me without any kind of judgment or fear. So, and that's
when it's crazy how healing crying is. I know I've struggled with crying with a lot of the trauma I've gone through, but I had a breakdown about a year ago. And I was so thankful because it was one of the big moments when I realized Allison was the woman I had to be with, because it's just like she was there, I started crying, and she just wrapped me up in her arms. I got to feel all small for a minute, just cry it all out, not feel judged, and just allow myself to process it all. And that was one of the most healing moments I've had in the last year and a half.
I've rubbed shoulders, and I have fought fights alongside of some of the toughest people you will ever meet, and they all cry. They all cry when it's time. Now, there is a time and place. You can't break down under pressure. You can't break down when people's lives are on the line. But let me tell you something, man. There is a time, and the toughest guys that I know will come together and let that stuff out. Because if you don't, it will destroy you. It will destroy you, because then you'll start looking for distractions, alcohol, drugs, just to name a few. So our teachings align very, very well with the this book, because our teachings tell us that liberation, our absolute freedom, which is to be as authentic as possible, begins with this awareness, right? With shaking the snow globe and starting to see what's settling, and then we can see it little by little and see, that's not me. I don't believe in that. I don't like that. I don't want to do that to someone else, type of thing. So, and honestly, at the end of the day, you can't break an agreement that you don't see, that you can't identify.
Yeah.
So, and this is where this philosophy of the four agreements strikes so deeply, because it kind of hands us a flashlight, right?
Yeah.
It says, look, see what you've been living with, see what you've been living under, right? And if it doesn't serve you and serve your greater good or your growth or your alchemy or the light or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, then let it go. And so we align with that almost perfectly. We are in great alignment with these ideas that he shares with us.
So we've talked a lot about what agreements are, but as I'm sure you've heard in the title, it is the four agreements. So this book invites us to really focus on building new agreements, in particular these four. And so we're going to dive into each of these, because each one has its own purpose, its own ability to unlock things within us to help approach life more meaningfully and authentically.
Right.
So when it comes to the first agreement, it is be impeccable with your word. And he says in the book, be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity, say only what you mean. And above all, avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others.
Right.
And this was so powerful to me, because when I started this journey, man, I always had a strong sense of humor, but it was always self-deprecating. And that's been one of my hardest things adjusting into this healing world, is I no longer have that sense of humor, because I refuse to speak about myself in negative ways, because our unconscious doesn't know the difference between good and bad. And so when we say something about ourselves, even jokingly, we are ingraining in our minds that this is true. Oh, I'm just stupid. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I'm just ugly. Whatever. These little jokes, these comments we make about ourselves will slowly become our beliefs if we are not careful.
Yeah. That word impeccable, that's a big, big, heavy word. And it's not just talking about your word. It's not just talking about speaking with integrity. Holy, right?
Right.
And most people hear this, and because I've had students that hear this and go, oh, well, that's easy, just don't lie. So you're telling me not to lie. But this agreement runs much deeper than that, right?
I would even say the most important thing is one of your favorite lines, one of my favorite quotes you have, is the most dangerous lie is the lie we tell ourselves.
That's the most dangerous lie ever told, is the one we tell ourselves.
So it's like, if we're not honest with ourselves, we start lying to ourselves, we are putting blinders up and not looking at the world as it actually is.
Right. Your word is not simply the sounds that you make or the thoughts. It's that vibration that you carry into the world in totality. What Ruiz is saying here is be impeccable. Be impeccable. Period. With your thoughts, with your intentions, with your words, with your actions. And this ties into one of our agreements, responsibility. You must be held responsible for all things. And that's a very lofty goal. It's a very lofty thing to try and achieve. And it's not achievable all the time. We are human beings. We have feelings, emotions, and we have lots of complicated layers. It doesn't mean we stop reaching for that next bar, right?
Yeah.
If we reach it high, then we'll always have it in front of us. So, it's not just about not lying. You shouldn't do that either.
Right.
But be impeccable with your word, and this is the way I taught you, and this is the way I teach other students, is this idea, be impeccable with your word, starts with your self-respect. That's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
And as you said, if you speak poorly about yourself, even if you're kidding, you don't know. Your subconscious doesn't understand humor. It's a very boring person at a party. It doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
You're planting seeds. You're planting these nasty seeds in your mind. And negative self-talk is never harmless. It is always harmful. Would you say? Think of it like a poison that kills you slowly, right? And when you're gossiping, you're throwing those nasty seeds into someone else's field. So they can't grow anything. All they're going to grow are weeds. So it doesn't contaminate just your mind, but your spirit, your body, your emotional bodies, every part of you can be poisoned if you're not impeccable with yourself first. And this is why a lot of people get stuck here, because they don't know how to talk nice to themselves. They don't know how to be good to themselves, right?
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart to hear that, but that's the truth.
Well, it's the society we live in nowadays. We would rather appease people than stand up for what's right to us. You know, it's kind of like the whole what is the term? Where you have like someone falls down sick around a group of people, and no one does anything because everyone is feeding off of everyone else. Instead of being impeccable with your values, you'd rather conform.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy how that works. But, you know, one of my favorite speakers I listen to is Martha Beck. And she had a near-death experience and started practicing radical honesty, which we did a whole episode about. And it ties right into this. The more you start living your truth, including with yourself, but with others, the more you start speaking your mind, the more you live in alignment with how you truly feel, the more abundance you will bring into your life, the more free you will feel, and the more your inner critic will quiet down. But with all this said, be impeccable with your word, yes. Do the best you can to be honest, to be transparent, to just speak your truth. But like everything we teach, it is a practice. It is not something you're going to be able to do overnight. You're not going to just be like, I'm going to be honest about everything. If you're someone who compulsively lies, or even just has a people-pleasing issue, or the opposite, trying to always show off and be top dog or whatever, this is something that's going to take work to get to a place where you're truly being impeccable and authentic. So just give yourself grace and do this. He brings it up even in the book. Like, this is something that takes time to cultivate, so don't beat yourself up if you're not perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something we say a lot. We are never looking for perfection. We're looking for presence. Yeah. Presence over perfection every time. And so my own kind of experience with this, I kind of grasped these ideas. You know, it was like I realized that I was violating this first agreement many times in a day. Sometimes I would like you, I'd make light of my own faults to deflect praise. You've told me before that you know, stop being so humble, because I would always find some reason not to take praise or not, right? So, or I would repeat stories that really shouldn't have been repeating, just to fill a gap in silence with somebody, just to kind of fit in or whatever.
Right.
And it never felt malicious in the moment or like I was hurting myself, because again, I was not aware of it. That's just what we did, right? That's just what people do. But all of it each time damaged me. And then I started doing the pause and delete, right? Yep. I learned the pause and delete. And he kind of talks about his own little way of doing it, but basically it's when you start to think about it. If you can catch it at the thought, you're on your way to really getting to that impeccability, right? But most times we'll say it. And, you know, if you're like me, I talk to myself a lot. When I do something, I'm like, Justin, or whatever, right?
Right.
And then I go, nope. I dispel that. I delete that from my mind. Whatever you need to say to make sure that your subconscious understands that it was a mistake saying it. It does not need to be in the operating system anymore, right?
Right.
So, and it's just these little tiny little things. I just find these things, and the more, as we say a lot here, the more we become aware of these things, the more we can kind of start picking them off and confronting them and then moving on. Yeah, that was kind of my experience with trying to put this into practice in my own life.
And that's powerful. I know for me, like I said, I mean, I self-deprecated all the time, and I always thought it was great because people loved my sense of humor. I could make people laugh. I never took anything personally because I'd just brush it off and make a joke about it. And that was just my way of deflecting feeling any type of shame or judgment. Is that I judge myself first, then I don't have to worry about what other people have to say because...
Right.
Because I already know that. All right, yeah, I'm not smart.
I don't know where I heard this. I don't know if it was a comedian or in a movie or something. If you know, let us know in the comments. But it was something like, you could never say to me what I haven't already said to myself, right? I've already covered all the insults, all the bases. You can't possibly hurt my feelings because I've done that enough to myself. But where this agreement aligns with our teachings is that we, every word that we speak, every action we take, every thought we have is a stone. And you can either build a bridge with those stones, you can build a prison with those stones. Up to you. So be very careful what you choose to build with your word, with your energy, with your thoughts, with your actions.
So what's the next agreement in the book?
The one that almost everybody has the hardest time with. Don't take anything personally. It's very difficult to, and he gives lots of good real life examples, right? Don't take anything personally. Nothing that others are doing is because of you. So there's nothing to take seriously is how he puts it, right? It's what they say, do, think is a reflection of them and not a reflection of you ever.
Yeah.
So
well, it's a projection of their own reality, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. And I think he says that. He says, don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality. And we have some axioms that fit nicely on this. Of all of the 4 agreements, and I know he has a book that says the 5th agreement, but today we're talking about the 4 agreements, which is another good book, by the way.
I need to read that one.
Oh my God, you don't.
I know.
But this one's the most liberating, but it's also the most difficult for most. Like I've said it to you before in our offline conversations over the years we've been working together. I've said it on the show. When you can remove the chain that anchors you to what people think of you, oh my God, you will soar into the outer edges of the universe, because it's one of the things that holds us down the most. To me, it's the biggest weight we carry, right?
No.
Because we really want to have approval, and we do not want rejection. We want praise. We do not want punishment. And our ego, it clings to that because feels good to get praise. It sucks to get punishment or rejection. Nobody likes being rejected. We've all been rejected.
Well, and just to add more to that, you have the negativity bias, which is ingrained in all of us. I don't care how spiritual you are. We can have 100 good things happen in a day, but one negative thing happens, I promise. What are you going to think about the most that day? The bad thing that happened to you. We are just, by nature, drawn to the bad things in life, or the bad things in us.
Right. And in this agreement, how he presents it and how he breaks it down for you is, again, it's like there are no good things and no bad things in what people project upon you, because other people's behavior and all those things are a reflection of them. Their anger, their praise, their indifference, their attachment to you, it doesn't matter. All of it is filtered through their lens, and their lenses, as ours are colored by our fears or our beliefs or our motives or our traumas and wounds and even our healing. So, it's people will say things, and this is why, I kind of live by this idea that the most important thing to me are the things that people can't give me. And that's because what people give you, they can take away. So put your energy into the things that people can't take from you. Those are things that you develop and create yourself. So the axiom I picked for this one is truth has no regard for popularity. This is how this agreement always kind of hit me, because the core of this agreement is realizing that what other people say or do is about them and not you, just like this axiom. And if you live for their approval or fear their disapproval, you become trapped in someone else's dogma and someone else's reality, someone else's expectations. Right?
Yeah, most definitely. Well, and I heard this quote a couple months ago that I really liked, and it's just like, if you ever catch yourself wondering, what do they think about me? You get in your head, you go somewhere, and you start thinking, everyone's looking at me and stuff. It's like, you will never know what's going on inside the minds of other people, what's happened for that day. Even that person who chewed you out at the supermarket. Like, you don't have
probably don't want to know.
Yeah, realistically. And so it's like, how dare you try to even assume you know what they're going through or what they think about you. Because in the end,
Right.
how much do they know about you? Probably as little as you know about them. Even people close in
Right.
your life don't know what's going on in your head. They might have a general idea how you work as a person and the stressors you got, but no one knows what you're going through on a given day. Only you do.
Right.
Same goes for everyone else. You do not know what's going on in their life. And if you can learn to have that internal locus of control where you don't need validation and acceptance from outside of you, you validate and accept yourself, you're never going to care what anyone says or feels about you, because in the end, that's their problem, not yours.
That's their problem and their business.
Yep.
It's not my business what other people think of me.
Yep.
And I've been saying that for as long as I can remember, and people they get twisted up. They can't understand what I mean by that. No, I literally mean that. What other people think of me is their business. And I don't want to read their minds. I don't want to know what they think because I have enough stuff going on in my own mind.
Yeah.
So, but this agreement and this axiom that I've paired with it, it's, again, it reminds us that truth does not bend to be liked. It stands on its own regardless of how many people embrace it or reject it, and how many people embrace you or reject you. If you tether your self-worth and your self-respect to these kind of things, to this kind of these shifting winds of other people's opinions, which opinions are garbage, right? You won't find your center very easily, if at all. But when you release that need to take these things personally, anything personally, you step into freedom. You start to remove that really heavy weight that holds you down. And, like I've said before, having dogma is okay, but make sure it's your own dogma.
Right.
Make sure it was something developed through your search for wisdom, through your seeking of growth and alchemy. So because if you live by truth, right? People are going to misunderstand you sometimes, or they're going to criticize you or reject you. But when you stop taking things personally, you start to not care, and you free yourself from that burden, a burden that somebody else taught you to have. So
no, it's a powerful agreement, because when we start doing this, we slowly allow ourselves to take responsibility for our lives and to be accountable with our lives. And not by the rules other people set, but by the rules we set within our own lives. And again, you can't assume you know the full picture of what this person is thinking, nor can they assume they understand everything going on in your life. And I think that ties perfectly into the next agreement, which is don't make assumptions. I love this quote from the book. We only see what we want to see. We only hear what we want to hear. Our belief system is just like the mirror that only shows us what we believe. And it's the truth. There's a system in our brain, the reticular activating system, which is the system that gets activated when you buy a new car and you see it everywhere. If we tell our brains that our day is going to be bad, our brains will scan the environment for everything bad that's happened. And I guarantee you, it's not going to pick up on any of the good stuff. It's only going to see what you want to see. And so if we can start to bridge that gap, we can start making our belief system less involved with these agreements that we had prior, where I'm a bad person, I'm not lucky, where I'm stupid. If we stop looking at our lives through the lenses of these agreements and start accepting that we don't know just how much we're capable of, and allow ourselves to step into the unknown and expansion, it's magical what we can do.
this one was the hardest one for me. Assumptions. This was my kind of roadblock when all the times I've gone through this, because our minds are master storytellers, right? And when we don't have the truth, we don't have all the details, we start to fill in the gaps with what we know or what we believe usually.
Yeah, and it's human nature to do that.
It is. But it oftentimes fills them with our fears and our insecurities. We create entire narratives out of these little fragments, and then we live through that as if those narratives are reality.
I'm guilty of that.
And
my God.
I am too. God, I am too. I think I shared this probably, this will be episode 52. I think like episode 10 or 15 or something, where I had somebody who I cared deeply about hurt me because I had an expectation that I didn't really actually have consciously, but it was clearly there because they hurt me by what they did. And it's because I assumed something that I shouldn't have. I assumed that, I wasn't cool, or I wasn't this or that. I'm a grown man. I should not be worried about these things, but sometimes I do. And this these assumptions are like these breeding grounds of anxiety. And then you start to resent the person. Like you kind of start to resent the person that you love because you're making these assumptions. But I've been doing this a long time, so I was able to kind of I was like, 10 steps into it and it's going, wait. None of this is true. Literally none of this stuff that you're going through right now is true. It's not reality. So, and here's some easy ones. Someone doesn't call you back, right? You were talking about dating earlier. Oh God, the first couple weeks of dating are like the most anxious filled, horrible nitro circus you can think of, man. Because it's like you go on the date and then, everybody is like really, everything's cool and you're talking and you're really starting to connect. And then, you get home and you're like, oh, should I text him? Oh, when is it too soon? Or when is it too late? Or, a couple of days go by and they don't text you, or they don't call, or you text them and they don't call you back, or whatever. What do you start doing? You start just making stuff up.
Yeah.
You're like, then you go back to the date, right? And then you start picking apart things. Oh, it must have been this that I did, or it must have been this that I said, or it must have been the way I dressed, or I must have smelled funny, or whatever. You'll make all the reasons up.
I knew I should have worn that red shirt.
I knew I shouldn't have. That she hates red. I should have known that. And unfortunately, once the mind has that story, then what do? We start looking for evidence. Right?
Exactly.
We start looking for evidence over and over and over again, and you'll find it. You can find evidence and proof for whatever you make up.
Preach it.
You do. I've done it. We've all done it.
Yep.
Every single person's done it.
Well, again, it's hardwired into us. Our brain needs congruency. If there are any gaps in a story, if there are any misalignments or lacking information, our brain are meaning-making machines. And if we don't have all the details, we will like you said, fill in those details with whatever we got, which is usually fears and insecurities.
But it's usually bull crap, right?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're upset with this person for something they never actually did.
Mm-hmm. And then you're acting out of alignment.
The entire thing was just a make-believe, a movie in your mind. And it sounds funny. It's funny. It's like...
In the moment, it's not funny, though.
But it's true. It's true. We do this crazy stuff. So the axiom that I paired with this one is, obviously, of course, right? Perception is reality.
Yep.
But perception must be tested. We have to meet reality where it actually is, whether we like the results or not, right? Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. Because assumptions are just untested perceptions. Think of it that way.
Ooh, that's good.
They are our shadows and fears pretending to be truth. So...
Well, and it's like one thing that's really important here is like, I know I've run into this. It's communication I struggled with for years. And no communication means you are operating on more assumptions than you are facts. You need to talk about this crap. You need to have those hard conversations, those awkward conversations, those vulnerable conversations. And I mean, it doesn't mean after the first date, it's like, hey, what went wrong? What do you not like about me? Like, I just haven't called you back today. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to offend you. But
I'm pretty sure half the earth has heard these second date update things they do on the morning shows now. And it's just like, they get the person on, they're like, they haven't called me back in like 5 days. And sometimes it's like 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, there's probably is something there. Just, moving along. But we love hearing this stuff, right? We're like, oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be really juicy. I hear them every morning when I drive to work. I have like a 35 to 40 minute commute to work when the traffic's not too bad. And I hear this come across the morning radio show, and it's painful.
It's so like cringeworthy. But I know I've had it on before when it was during my commute, and man, I wouldn't shut it off. I'm like, I want to hear what happens, but I can't.
Well, like we talked about in the Why Do We Choose Chaos show, which is, sometimes we just got to watch a train crash into a train, dude.
Yep.
We just can't help it. Right?
That's why horror movies are so popular. My nervous system's going crazy right now. I'm so happy.
Yeah, this is awesome. Someone's going to chop me up. But I actually had something happen very, very recently, within the last week. So recently, I had a misunderstanding with someone who I consider a family. And I was doing some work on our other channel, my old podcast, the KOA, and was going to do some work, but I got distracted, and I kind of left it unfinished. What I was trying to do is I was just trying to clean things up and kind of get rid of the stuff that really doesn't go there anymore. So I really just set everything to private, right? All the videos to private. And then I was, piece by piece, I was going back through and I was putting stuff back on the channel. But in the middle of it, like I always do, I don't know if I got ADHD or something, I went off and did something else. Well, this man, my brother, I consider him a brother, instead of just freaking out on me, he took a day and then he came back and just asked me, hey, I was sending somebody to watch one of my videos and it wasn't there. Are you working in the channel or something? I was like, oh my God, yes, I actually was. And then I walked away from it for like a week and I totally forgot, right, that I was doing that. So graciously, he, just came at me. He just sought clarity. And I'm so grateful that he did, because, he could have just assumed that he hates me now and he's removing all my stuff, which of course wasn't true. So, it's good to seek clarity. And like you said, have those conversations. Even if you're kind of feeling like, oh, this bastard did this to me, it's more likely not the case. So how powerful for this, well, for the axiom too, but for this agreement, how powerful is curiosity and communication?
It's vital. It is so vital to want to understand things on a deeper level. I have seen so many relationships, even in my own personal life, that have just gone to complete hell because instead of looking at the clear details and facts and having dialogue around that, I would rather make all these assumptions to avoid accountability around these little things that need to change.
Right.
Instead, I'd rather just dissolve this whole thing and blame everybody else. And it's like, you gotta be willing to have communication, and with clarity, with curiosity, you can begin to dive into the root of the problem. And you know what? If we mess up, if there is something we did that we just do not want to be accountable for, ask yourself, why am I so afraid of being judged for this? What's getting in the way? Is it pride? Is it shame? Is it something you're already telling yourself and you're just so afraid to hear it from anybody else?
Right. Well, and let's talk about the other end of that. So we have a responsibility to our fellows, to our brothers and sisters, our family, our partners, people who we are communicating with, right? So on the other end of this agreement, let's say that I did what I did, complete mistake on my part. And let's say, what if he would have just, lost it on me and got really upset? It's now my responsibility to say, listen, hold up, let me tell you what happened, right? And not allow myself to get sucked into that tornado with him. So, and a lot of these agreements have, well, all of them really have kind of two responsibilities depending on what side of the agreement you're on. So, and that goes back to being impeccable, because it's not just being impeccable with what we're doing, it's to understand where the other person's coming from sometimes too.
Yep.
Even if they're spitting venom at us.
Perception is reality, right?
Hold on. Let me help you through this so that we can understand together why you're doing this or why you're upset or whatever the case may be. So, we have to align our perception with truth, with actual reality. Because when we do, it will guide us. It will guide us through these things that are hard. And if we don't, then we get misled, taken for a ride. We have to, our path reminds us, Ashla reminds us that if you seek truth, you must also be willing to open the door and step beyond these traps that you've created in your mind. You'll never find truth in there. You just find...
That's why it's so dangerous to have yourself as your only confidant. So many people nowadays live in their heads, and it's just so unhealthy because your mind will lead you astray, and you will only trust your own judgment. Without proper mirroring and reflection from people from opposing perspectives, you're doing nothing but ingraining bad behaviors, and it's just so dangerous.
Well, and that's why we teach to get away from echo chambers.
Yep.
Get away from them. Because echo chambers, and I know we've talked about this before, so I'll be quick, but these religious echo chambers, these psychological echo chambers, these political echo chambers, these social echo chambers, you have to step outside of those and test your beliefs, test your ideals, and test yourself out into a world, into the wider world, where people are not going to agree with you, or people are going to give you grief, because that's how you test whether the things that you keep regurgitating and keep saying over and over, and you're parroting this whole group of people who won't go talk to anyone else. That's how you find wisdom and truth, actual truth. So, echo chambers, we are either super solitary nowadays, where we just have this thing and this is our only source of everything in life, and we don't go test what we're learning anywhere else, or we just surround ourselves with people who just regurgitate back to us what we want to hear through those echo chambers. But both of those are super dangerous.
Oh, I completely agree.
And at that point, you're not being domesticated by other people, you're domesticating yourself.
Well, it's like, I know I've run into that, where it's like, when I was in that toxic relationship for 7 years, I started cutting people out of my life. And I'd just start making these base assumptions of, like, I'm a horrible person. I'm someone who has no follow through. And it's like I was exhibiting a lot of those characteristics within that dynamic. But it's like, instead of talking to the people that were still in my life, I would just start isolating more, because it was easier for me to deal with the criticism from myself, because I didn't want to hear it from other people. When in fact, it's not even criticism as much as it's feedback, constructive feedback. Which can be so beneficial. And even then, it's like most of the people in my life still loved me regardless of where I was. But I had lived so much in my head that I had convinced myself otherwise.
Right, yeah.
So, what's the fourth agreement?
Our team borrowed directly from this agreement, almost word for word. Well, not word for word, but the ideal, right? We align with this perfectly, and this is ingrained in our teachings. Always do your best. You guys have heard me say this over and over and over and over again. It's not my endeavor to make you perfect, and it shouldn't be your goal to be perfect. Just do your best. Show up. Sometimes that's 50%. Sometimes it's 110. Ruiz writes, always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. Under any circumstance, simply do your best, and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. And that's perfect. Out of all these agreements, this one, like I say, we use this ideal came from this book, literally. When I talk about this and how I integrated it into the teachings came directly from this agreement, because nobody has said it better than him.
Yeah, the whole chapter on this is just gold.
It is gold. It really is gold. And, he kind of says agreement 2 is the hardest. But really, it's been my experience that individually people really get stuck on one of these or the other. Mine was the assumptions, right? So, but I know there's people out there who are really stuck on this one. And what I want them to understand is that this agreement is attempting to free us from that prison of perfection. Perfectionism is very dangerous. Because really what it's saying is if it's not flawless, right, it's not worth doing. And of course, what we teach is give what you can with your heart, with the heart you have today in the moment, and let that be enough. It has to be enough. Your best always has to be enough. And I don't care what anybody else says around you, understand, your best has to be enough, because it's going to change from day to day to day. Sometimes you feel strong and capable. Sometimes and when you have those good days, your mind is clear, right? And your energy is just like, you're like Dragon Ball Z in it, dude. You're like you're just Super Saiyan. You wake up and you're a Super Saiyan. And other days, it's like, man, I barely got myself out of bed.
Yeah.
But understand, those days where you simply just show up, sometimes that can be a great act of courage, right? Because there's just days like that. It is what it is. But understand that both are valid. It's great to come at 150%. If you can only show up at 50 or 25, That is what it is, and it has to be enough. Just don't get stuck in this prison. Just don't get stuck in this little prison of being perfect.
No, it's so true. And I mean, one thing for me is it's like, I love how you brought up perfectionism, because I know I struggled forever getting momentum in my life. I was constantly wandering. I had little bursts of energy in some directions, but it's all about action. All right, when you're too busy trying to orchestrate and organize the perfect plan to accomplish your goals, 9 out of 10, you're not even going to try for your goals. You're going to build that list, you're going to sit on it, and then you're going to lose the motivation. All right?
Well, because you got to make the list perfect. The list has to be perfect.
Yep, that first step has to be
one
perfect.
little tiny flaw, then it's like, oh, it's not worth doing, and you just...
Yep. I remember when I started my coaching business, I started building a website, and I couldn't get it just right, and so I never launched the website, which I'm about to dive into and go ahead and finally publish here in the next month or two. But
oh, good.
But it's like every time I would make these excuses of perfectionism to avoid just doing my best. And, if you're someone who's completely stuck and stagnant, because I've been there as well, all right, your best isn't going to be go start that business. It's going to be get outside for a little bit. Go spend time with people for a little bit. It's about trying to make yourself incrementally better than you were the day before. Or at least taking steps. And if you got 20% when you had 80% the day before, then you accept that. And you work with yourself where you're at.
Right. Greatness is not, I want you to understand this. Greatness is not so much in how much you can give, but in the sincerity in which you give it, right? That's something, that's a goal worth shooting for. Just be as sincere and just do your best as you can.
Peace comes from showing up, not showing off, right?
That's right.
So I think these agreements as a whole, they're just so powerful because they're a great baseline to start building healthy unconscious practices, because all this work is around the unconscious. These agreements aren't stored in our common day thought. It's stored in our nervous system when we get triggered or activated, when we're faced with situations that call out the worst parts of ourselves. It's these unconscious agreements we've made to show up in hard times to be safe, which is totally fine. But it's unlearning and breaking the habit of who you are and rebuilding who you are step by step. And these 4 agreements create a strong foundation for anyone to start cultivating an authentic and fulfilling life. So I think when it comes to to this book, the real work isn't necessarily embodying the 4 agreements, it's breaking old agreements, as we talked about in the beginning of this.
Yeah. Because these agreements are powerful, but just making agreements with things is a form of power. You're either taking power, reclaiming power, or giving your power away, right? He talks about these things, these agreements as like being spells that you cast on people or that people cast on you.
Yep.
And you give your silent consent. And if you've agreed, whether it's consciously or not, that you are unworthy, for example, you'll see the world through that lens. And you'll interpret and you'll notice, like you were saying about buying a car, you'll notice the same car, the same color, right?
Yep. Even
the same sunglasses the dude's driving in, wearing your same sunglasses sometimes. But you'll see the world through that lens, and you will literally see every glance or every silence or every failure or every imagined thing that someone else is doing to you. You will find that proof. That's how powerful this is. So, and if you agree that you are a vessel of light and you're capable of growth and you're powerful and truth and compassion are is your compass and your guides, you will live in a reality where that truth expands with every step, with every unfolding. So you get to choose. At the end of the day, make your choices wisely, right? And this is why awareness is so critical, not just for this book, but for our path and for life. Awareness is one of the most critical things we can do. I should say that we can practice, because without it, you're bound by all this stuff that you really didn't give conscious consent about. You don't even know it's there. And and we teach, that's the first step toward freedom, is practice gaining awareness so that you can have what? Clarity, right?
Well, and it's like, I mean, we talk about emotional suppression, about how it's like this energy that's charged up, and how it's like these agreements are stored in our nervous system. When we can start breaking these agreements, the relief we have, the amount of energy we have opened up to us, the amount of power opened up to us, it's phenomenal because we shift from this place of scarcity, of lack, of fear, and we go into an area of abundance, of power, of respect, not for others, for ourselves. Though, depending on where you're at in your healing journey, it might be the opposite, but realistically, we're learning to respect ourselves.
Well, at the end of the day, Michael, and you know this because this is something I've taught you, kind of forced upon you in a way, in a good way, is that we can't respect others until we respect ourselves. We can't truly love anyone else until we love ourselves, right? So, it is, if it's backwards, then, you should take a moment and pause and say, okay, I've got this backwards maybe. Let me try loving myself first and working on that, and then let's see, always investigate, always, don't lose curiosity, because you're going to find the right answer for you if you do that. But it's really difficult to truly love someone unconditionally if you can't even unconditionally love yourself. Hiccups.
Well, and it's like there's a saying out there, and I think the inverse is applied to this as well. You can't meet anyone as deeper than they've met themselves. But in turn, you can't meet anyone deeper than you've met yourself. If you want to cultivate these meaningful and deep connections, these authentic, vulnerable, communicative relationships, it's more than just finding a partner who's willing to do it. You got to be able to do that work yourself. And I think breaking these agreements is the first place to start. I know for me, one of the greatest agreements I realized I had is I went through something really traumatic after high school with someone, and with how bad it went for her, I ended up committing to myself, if anyone I'm with is ever going through a hard time, I'm going to show up, I'm going to save them no matter what. And in the height of those emotions, because that's where the agreements really set into our nervous system, is when we have really high emotions and we make a promise to ourselves, consciously or unconsciously. And after that time, every relationship I was in, no matter how much of a dumpster fire it became, no matter how much someone was destroying their lives, I would suck it up and I would try to save them from it. And you can't save people from the consequences of their actions, or they never learn the consequences or to be better. All right, it's whenever you try to save anyone, all you end up doing is making it harder for them to get their life.
Their lessons are theirs. Their karma is theirs. Yep. All you can do is provide space. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. And look, this we're talking about breaking old agreements. This is not about memorizing these 4 ideals and just feeling inspired for a week. Yeah, I did it. I feel inspired. And these things are very inspirational. And they're not slogans. These are tools for deprogramming an entire lifetime of conditioning and domestication, as he says, which is a really powerful way to say it. He doesn't pull any punches. He's very impeccable with his words. He wants you to understand that you are domesticated. I'm domesticated. You're domesticated. All of us are domesticated in some way. And this is a dismantling process. We talk about all the time. You must unfold. It's an unfolding, and it takes time to do it right.
Yep, and practice.
Yeah, right. And this process will. You'll start finding grief in your heart. You'll start being angry. Really, for the years that you feel like you're going to feel like, man, I spent all these years believing this stuff, and then once you realize that, most of it was not good for you, you're like, now you're mad. Now you're angry.
Right.
But I want to everyone our path that we teach. It's never about shame and it's never about blame. Those will get you nowhere. They will get you nowhere. So you're going to be angry, and you're going to maybe feel some shame because you're going to feel like I let myself be tricked into this. Or you're going to be angry at the people. You're going to start finding the people in your life that did this to you. Don't be ashamed. We all are a part of this. And it doesn't do any good to point the finger, because most things, as we said earlier, most things are done with good intentions. But that's what the road to hell's paved with, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I'm glad you brought up forgiveness, right? We bring it up a lot on this podcast. It is such an important thing, because when you carry grievances, when you carry condemnation for people in your life and what they've done, these are weights you're attaching to yourself. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. If we can't work on forgiving people,
that I know.
Yeah. If we can't work on forgiving people and letting go of the things that have happened to us, it doesn't mean I forgive you, welcome back to my life. No. Let people show you where they belong in your life. But without
Yeah.
forgiveness, it's going to become something that slowly corrupts your soul. It is so unhealthy to hold resentments, because in those resentments we lose sight of ourselves. We end up giving our power away to people who may not even be in our lives anymore.
Right. And who will never, they hurt you. They're not going to help heal you in most cases. And you shouldn't rely on them to heal you. Our teachings remind us that to really truly walk free, right? To show up, we got to take off, we got to loosen and break those chains that we put there, but also the ones that we didn't. Still our responsibility.
Yeah.
It's still our responsibility.
Right?
And this isn't a one-time thing like we talk about with shadow work. It's not a one-time thing. It's going to be an ongoing discipline for the rest of your life. It has been for me. I know it has been for you. So, but each time you release a chain or you break free from one little thing, the path does start to become clearer and more clear and more clear. And this fog, this illusionary fog, this just starts to lift little by little. You will see the other side, little by little, but it's an unfolding.
I think the last tool I really want to bring up, community. Find people on the same path you are. Find people who you trust so you can start building these skills. You can be held accountable and you can help them. It's through community can we become greater than ourselves.
Just don't, again, as a caution, as we talked about earlier, do not allow yourself to be stuck in an echo chamber. Test yourself. Go out and test yourself every so often.
If you're trying to quit a drug addiction, don't keep hanging around druggies expecting them to help you get off the drugs.
Well, that's a community. That's a community, right? We got to be careful. Got to be careful who we hang out with. And sometimes it's okay it's okay when those communities change. They'll change over time.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's supposed to happen that way.
So life on the other side, living in freedom. When we're able to start integrating these agreements into our life, when we're not craving so much control over every little thing, but instead we have control over ourselves and our reactions to the life we are living. We get more clarity. We have less fear. We're more present. We have so much more contentment with our lives, and we're not chasing validation, wealth, status. We come to a place where we can be okay being in the moment and being ourselves for who we are, where we're at.
Yeah. And here's a beautiful truth about this. This freedom that we're talking about isn't about everything in your life going right or awesome or perfect. It's about learning to walk in harmony even when these bad things happen, these challenges or these roadblocks come. But because you develop this quiet confidence, right? And you know that you're no longer bound by these things that you don't actually agree to. So, and of course we teach that mastery is not this destination that we arrive at. Enlightenment is not this destination. It's a way of living. You will stumble. You will forget sometimes. And these old agreements, they'll come slipping in the back door if they can, right?
Yep.
They'll try to get right back in there. So, but every time you bring yourself back to these ideas, you just strengthen your alignment little by little by little. And in time, you'll find that your actual natural state, your authentic state, is no longer about fear or control, but presence, as you said, and clarity.
Yeah. Well, it's like
and it's important.
No, keep going.
Well, I was going to say this real quick, and it's also important that this life on the other side we're talking about, again, it's not perfect. You're free. You're more free.
Yeah. I mean, think of mastery as practice, not a destination. All right? As we want to master these skills, it's all about cultivating those muscles, doing the lifting, doing the hard work. There are so many people who have turned depressed and are suffering through so many issues on the healing journey because they got the awareness, but they never took that awareness and started cultivating action that was different than how they showed up before. Awareness is a double-edged sword because it's great to understand how you work, but if you don't start changing the things that you realize are wrong or that are not supporting who you want to become, then you end up judging yourself and cultivating even worse issues because you're not actually making change in your life. And the change is difficult because it's all about when you get triggered, being able to ground yourself in the present and respond differently. It's being able to take these things in the past. Yeah, you can realize this resentment's not helping you. But if you don't allow yourself to feel those emotions of anger, of pain, if you don't give yourself the safety to do that, all you're going to do is have the same issue, and you'll be judging yourself because you know better.
And it'll manifest into actual diseases that will kill you someday. Stress will kill you someday if you don't learn to surrender and let go and choose. This is not a book that you read once and put back on the shelf. It's not one of those. I've got lots of those on this shelf that I read once and it's like, it was okay. Not this one. I've read it. I've read the paperback so many times that it got beat up really bad. Like the book doesn't even sit right anymore, you know. And then once I found it when I found it on Audible, I've listened to it dozens and dozens of times because it's a pretty quick read. It's a small book, but it's super powerful.
I think the Audible copy is only 5 hours, but like you were saying earlier about how it takes some time to get through, it's a dense book for 5 hours. You're gonna want to stop after every chapter, like, okay, let me soak this in real quick.
Yeah, and you have to. You really have to, and it's going to hit each person differently. You know, with Heather, we had to take little bites, and sometimes we would wait a couple days because it affected her so profoundly. So this book, these ideas will evolve with you if you let them, much like the axioms do, right? So, and every time I've ever revisited this book, no matter which way whether I heard it or read it, it gave me a different reflection. It gave me something new to see in myself, right? And sometimes that's a reminder of like, wow, I've really nailed some of this. And sometimes it's a little nudge that says, oh, I found an opportunity.
Deal.
So my invitation to everyone is this: just don't read this book once, reread it. And I think you're going to, whether if you haven't read it before, I think once you read it, I think you're going to want to read it again. But, read it as many times as you need to. Reflect on it as often as you need to. And, make a choice to claim these ideas as yours. And, you will find more freedom. And you'll find a pathway to authenticity. Every day we hold the pen to write our own contracts. So that's, at the end of the day, that's what you learn with this book.
You don't have to suffer by old rules. You can choose again. That's the real power of the 4 agreements. We can just step into our power, give ourselves grace, and allow ourselves to work with ourselves where we're at. We can start unrooting these weeds that we have accumulated over the years and start planting a beautiful garden within ourselves. It's just about patience and showing up for yourself every day, whatever that looks like. So, I believe you brought an affirmative prayer with you today.
Of course I did, right? I love those, and so do you. And I think you guys are going to start loving them too. So, let's close our eyes. Source of light, of love and truth, I stand in this moment with an open heart and a willing spirit. I release the silent contracts that have bound me to fear, to limitation, to falsehood. They no longer define me. They no longer can claim me. I now choose agreements rooted in light. My words are pure, aligned with truth and upliftment. I take nothing personally, for I see the truth in others' actions. They are theirs, not mine. I live without assumptions, choosing clarity and understanding over shadows and make-believe stories. And I give my best in all I do, knowing my best is enough in this moment. Every breath I take affirms my freedom. Every step I take is guided by integrity, compassion, and the wisdom of the light. I walk forward unchained, unburdened, and unafraid. For I am the author of my agreements, and they are written in harmony with my soul's purpose. So it is, and so shall it be.
Man, those are so relaxing too. Start getting into that vibe. It's like a meditation.
It can be, yeah.
For our exercise today, I got spot the agreement behind the emotion. So, right? Recall a recent situation where you felt triggered. It could be anything. Were you feeling hurt, anger, shame, guilt, frustration, insecurity? What's something that really got under your skin this week? And then ask yourself, what did I believe in this moment? Look beneath the emotion and ask yourself, what is the story I'm telling myself about this? They don't respect me. I'm not enough. I'll always mess things up. If I say no, they'll leave me. Identify the hidden agreement. What agreement have I made with myself, others, or the world that made this feel so personal? I must be perfect to be loved. My worth is based on what I do for others. Disagreement means rejection. People only stay if I don't speak up. Then lastly, challenge it with compassion. Ask, is this true? Where did this come from? Whose voice is this that planted this in my mind? Was it a family member? Was it a belief I had watching a show, or maybe something I went through in life? A horrible breakup, or a friend who decided to move on? Where did this come from that I embodied this belief? Do I want to keep living life by this rule? Then lastly, write a new agreement. Create a new belief that's more aligned with your truth. I am lovable even when I make mistakes. I can speak my truth and still be safe. I don't have to earn my worth. It's already mine. So for a journaling prompt, it'll go around this exercise. When you take this agreement you have found within yourself from something you went through, journal about where did this belief come from? How has it shaped the way I speak, love, or show up? What has this belief cost me? What might my life look like if I let it go? And what new agreement do I need to make instead to balance this out? Take these things to help you cultivate a deeper understanding with yourself and give yourself a strategy to start building the life you want. Now, I know we brought up in the beginning of the episode that we're giving away a free copy of this book. So if you want to get your own copy, jump onto our YouTube channel and put a comment on there about what your favorite part of this episode was. And if you want to see more of these more of our conversations, especially our face-to-face and not just hear us, subscribe to our YouTube channel because we have all the video footage there.
Yeah, and drop in the comments what books you think we should do.
Yeah, please do.
I love doing these books.
Well, thank you for your time. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucem.
Ad Lucem.